What year was this?
This is, let's see, we moved to Seattle in 69. So somewhere between, I think I meet him either in 67 or 68. So somewhere,
Your husband.
so not too long after I graduate, right? So somewhere between there and 69, 66 and 69, he and I meet, and he wants to join the Black Panther Party, but they're closed. And so he has a friend in Seattle, and he says, let's move to Seattle. You need to get away from your mama anyway. You two hanging on to your mama too tight. I'm like, okay, that's okay. But I'm already politically indoctrinated anyway. And so we get up to Seattle and we start working in the free breakfast program. And after a year,
because there was a chapter in Seattle.
Yeah, it was the first chapter formed outside of California.
Oh, yeah. Outside of California or outside of Oakland?
Outside of California. Los Angeles was outside of Oakland, but this is outside of the state of California. And so we joined up there, and we were up there for 2 years. So I told you that brief history of what discrimination. Oh, and I'm 15 years old. I'm in high school, and Kennedy is shot, and the news.
That was 63.
And the news shoots through the school. But to show you how oblivious I am, it's like, he's shot. People are crying, they're upset. I'm totally oblivious to politics. I don't have a clue.
But you knew he was the president.
I did know that. And it was after I graduate, and it's the culture, and the politics with the arts, visual, created images in my head. The arts and politics that started me on the path of the Black Panther Party.
Other than, so Ms. Asali, other than these two children who, when you were playing in the dirt and they told you can't live in my house, but then they took you anyway, what other types of experiences did you have as a child, as an adolescent, in terms of discrimination as a Black person in Oakland?
Well, those are the two that stick out in my head. And we used to play in the backyard, and if the ball went over the fence on this side, the ball was lost. If it went over to Miss Katie's yard, she was nice. She'd bring us into her garden, and she just had all these flowers, and she just had a beautiful, I guess we got the ball. I don't know. I was just so amazed at her garden, because our backyard was all pebbles, and for the apartment building. And so, no, those are the things that were influential to me, that stuck in my mind for some reason. I have no idea, but that's what stuck in my mind. And I realized it had an effect later on in my politics. It was part of my politics, because I like I said, I started becoming involved with the boycott of Housewives Market.
What is Housewives Market?
Okay. Housewives Market, Black people during that time, we were concentrated in West Oakland. We lived in North Oakland. We lived somewhere in East Oakland, and we weren't supposed to, because there was a line on the other side of the lake too. But my aunt lived in the Fruitvale district before it became known as the Fruitvale district that it is today. And but for the most part, and we when my mother finally was able to move, we moved to East Oakland into a primarily white neighborhood. And I remember coming outside, and speaking to my neighbor who was coming outside or getting out I don't know. Anyway, I saw my neighbor, and she looked at me and turned her head and walked inside the house. And the next thing I know, there was a for sale sign. She was white or Italian or something. She was not black. And she wasn't Hispanic. There wasn't hardly any Hispanics then. It was mostly black and white. And then the neighbors on this side moved. And black people would move in. And our block became a black, mostly black. And then that part of East Oakland, because that's where we moved to.
And this was in the late 60s?
Early 60s, 63. My uncle was the first to move out on 76th Avenue. And then we moved out on 79th Avenue. And then that shortly after, well, a few years later, that's when my mother's employer told her that she couldn't work for her anymore because she was too disfigured. And so those are my subliminal influences, but it's mainly culture and politics at the time of between 66 and 69 that I'm starting to get a consciousness.
When black leaders were starting to speak out through art and culture and speeches. And
I'm becoming aware that I am a black person, Afro-American, then African-American. And I have a history. I didn't even know about slavery.
You didn't?
No. And then I find out that I have a history. We were enslaved in the United States, and we go across the waters. And not only do we go across the waters, we go so far back that I have to read books that say that we had civilization before the 5000 BC that is assigned to us, And so
Miss Asali, how come you didn't know of that history when you were growing up? That black people had been brought here as enslaved people?
Well, my mother didn't tell me, and I don't think if I learned it in school, I don't know anything about it. The most story that I...
And newspapers, television, radio, they never talked about these kinds of things?
Eisenhower is my only remembrance. And television, I didn't have TV until I was about 10, 11,
in the 50s,
like that. Right? Yeah. And then we would listen to Howdy Doody and the Nelson family, Harriet, and anyway, it was the Nelson family and Ricky Nelson, and he was the same. And I was in love with Ricky Nelson. And then my neighbor, one of my neighbors, who we're all black, and the four of us in the middle of the block. And one of my friends, she says, Ricky Nelson said he didn't want any black people coming to his concerts. I immediately fell out of love with him.
Sorry, is Ricky Nelson, is he a black person?
No, he's white.
So in the time that you were coming up, the actual history of the United States was not really widely known by people?
I'm sure it was known because people have been writing books. W.E.B. Du Bois went to the UN with a whole bunch of folks, and we cried genocide, and Paul Robeson, we cried genocide. So it's not that this isn't going on. It's just I'm just not exposed to it at all.
Sure.
I am a blank. I don't know anything that's going on, and then suddenly I become involved. And I don't know if I can tell this story short, but there's a story. 2016, as I'm trying to recant my life, 2016, because I'm on the host committee of the Black Panther Party 50th anniversary. And so this is when I began to research who I am, not be ashamed of being a Black Panther.
There was shame associated with
me.
Oh, you.
Me. We were beat up and had all these stories that are out in the community, and I don't want nobody to know I was a Black Panther. I might not get a job, And all of a sudden, 2016, oh, look what I was doing. Why am I ashamed of that? You know, so I found this picture of me boycotting Housewives Market in 1968, but it doesn't say that it's 1968. It doesn't say that I'm boycotting. This is just my memory. And I'm like, I think it's Housewives Market. Housewives Market, located in downtown Oakland. Black people were concentrated in West Oakland. A lot of black people, when they migrated to California and the Oakland Bay Area, they concentrated in West Oakland. A lot were from Louisiana. Housewives Market catered to the kind of food that the people from Louisiana, the way we cooked. And my people, my ancestors are Louisiana, but I didn't know it at the time. And so I remember, I see the picture, so it must have happened. So I began to research.